follow Bitcoin?
I've had a little bit over the years, but not much.
It has jumped the last few days.
Did it?
What has?
Bitcoin.
Oh.
Thinking about getting out because I lost, and then it's back. I'm like, maybe it's time to leave.
Yeah, it was up. I mean,
Okay, we are back in the meeting room, and we have going to reconvene the budget workshop. So at this time, we'll reconvene. We have already been in the commissioner meeting this today with the pledge, so we'll just reconvene the budget meeting. Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chair. Good to see everybody again. Obviously, we've been through this process quite a bit, so we're familiar with it. So with that being said, we'll send it to my partner in crime here, Tim Anderson.
looks like we're back on the screen. We're didn't make a ton of progress yesterday. We were going over some of the personnel changes, so I haven't made any of the. There was some potential changes being mentioned yesterday. I think it kind of sounded like there may have been some, at least a couple yeses on some of these, but I didn't want to mess with the budget too much until we have some good, solid final answers on this stuff, so I can just make one set of adjustments and then be balanced after that. So we left off yesterday talking about some of these positions, so I don't know if that's where we want to continue, if we want to get some yeses or nos on any of these.
Commissioners?
Tim, I can't read the full screen there. Where is that all of it?
There's a little bit more.
Is there a bunch more under that?
No, I think it stops with the commissioners. That is the last one. Is that big enough to be able to read?
Yeah.
Because
For me, it is.
that's all the positions right there.
Have all these been looked at by HR?
The prosecuting attorney one, at least as of the time that we had received it, I think it said a no on it. The elections one is already an approved position, so it wasn't reviewed by HR because it's not a new position. And then the commissioner ones, I'm not. I believe they have, but I'm not. Okay. Yes.
It was reviewed, the commissioners was reviewed by HR? Okay.
So where is the HR person? She's not here.
Kelly, for the senior, sorry to put you on the spot, for the senior DPA, was the intent to move that to a chief? Because I think the chief DPAs are 22. So that would then, those 20 chief is a reviewed position already, if that's the intent. So this would then be yes, because it's already a position that exists.
How many hours are being added to the civil service?
Jennifer, do you want to answer that? I know you manage that area.
32 hours a month so we went ahead and adjusted and added more hours. Still gonna be a part-time position. Writer out through the year because
Here's what was submitted. New civil clerk position funds were established at 32 hours a month, not a week. Clerk is training and requires more training hours a week to get up to speed on new position, but still under 30 hours a week to be considered part-time with no benefits.
How many hours a week is that position? Does it require?
I couldn't speak to that, what it needs.
I wouldn't say that it needs 30 hours a week. It all depends on how much activity is going on for like testing or promotional, that kind of stuff. At the time that position was created outside of HR, figured 8 hours a week was probably sufficient. I mean, like I said, it really just depends on what's going on. As they were connected with HR, it was really hard to separate the two positions, so I can't.
Okay, but the request is doubling and more, just over double what it was? Is workload that double now, or
Yeah,
I'm
it's the
just,
same. 32 a month is 8 hours a week.
the
Yeah, that's where it was established at.
July, it was only, the 13,348 was only for July 2023 to December.
so just for 6 months?
Yeah, it was just for 6 months.
Well, that
and
makes
that's why
more
they got
sense.
it. Yeah,
The full year.
the full year, yes. That position does not need to be.
Any other questions?
The purpose of raising the hours in the commissioner's office from 37.5 to 40 hours per week, as when we're asking everybody else to look at cuts, what's the reasoning?
I think this budget was created in September, so it's been a long process, so I think things were looking a bit better at that time, and once we got the revenue forecast. So, I mean, certainly that's flexible. It's something employees had asked for to more stabilize things. Some were on flex schedules, some were, doing different things, so.
And you have a grade 16 going to a grade 19? That's 3 steps.
And that's something, that's Jennifer's position, so the intent is to make her into a management position. You know, to give her a little context, she's essentially taken on 3 jobs, you know, this year. BOE hearings, as you know, went to 300 hearings, so she really worked that, had to train Maria. She's currently the clerk of the board, while our clerk is on leave, and then she manages the day-to-day functions of the office. So, yeah, and as I've talked about, I stand by it. She's done a tremendous job. She's the glue of the office. And I think the fiscal impact is $4 an hour and about maybe 9-10 grand a year. So that is the intent. I think she deserves it, and you know, it would be a management function role.
Nothing to do with the person but the job position, you know, is he grade 19? We have accountants that are at grade 19. Is that fair to say that someone with a, you know, 4-year degree and the position, I'm just asking because, and take all personnel matters out of it as far as who's in that position. It's just, it seems like a pretty big jump.
And I understand the conversations that are going on in the courthouse. Can you compare apples to apples when it comes to certain jobs? I don't know, you know, somebody that has expertise in, you know, putting together numbers, and then, you know, her job skill sets that are perhaps different, you know, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to connecting the dots, when it comes to having institutional knowledge, when it comes to being able to be flexible, to jump from clerk to the BOE board, to running the day-to-day operations, to having relationships in the courthouse. So there's what I call intangibles that, you know, maybe you're not a CPA, but you know, you provide a function within the courthouse that is so essential that, and you know, whether she jumps to a 19 and the board decides not, I certainly think she deserves a raise, as the chair and I have talked about. She's been the glue of the office. I mean, since I have stepped in, you know, our long-term clerk quit out of the blue, and she stepped in and just was a rock star. And, you know, that was very helpful for me, who was navigating and new. So, you know, again, I stand by it, and we've made adjustments within our budget to be very strategic. You know, we eliminated a position. That position was in fact eliminated. We consolidated some positions. You know, our intent is to hire the government affairs person, but that's all without growing government. So, and I've always said since I got in the door, I'm going to be more strategic in my hiring practice. I don't want people that are just here to collect a check, and that's not the case in our office.
No, but we do have a lot of hardworking people in the courthouse
Absolutely.
that don't
Absolutely.
get
And I-
three
and I-
step jumps.
Yeah.
And Margot, I see HR in the room, you have reviewed this,
They talked to me about, yeah.
okay? And can you just go over some of the advantages of a 19 as far as overtime? They can no longer put in for overtime?
Right, it would be an exempt employee, yes.
Okay.
There would be overtime.
And she's not going to a mid-level 19, it's 19-1.
Yes.
And Chair, you make a good point, because because of her role, having to step into so many different facets, I think we looked at the fiscal impact of what she makes now,
Yep.
you know, because of overtime, because of the needs. I think it was $6,000 would be the additional cost for her. So, because we run lean, we don't have extra people. Because without Jennifer, she does the job of 3 people. She literally
We're not
does.
questioning
No,
you know,
and
her
I know it.
capabilities or her duties. Well, I mean, we are the duties. I mean, it's the
Right,
position.
and I understand, and I totally respect where you're coming from, Commissioner, because there's a lot of people in the courthouse that deserve raises. I mean, the 11s should be jumping to 12s. There's no question. And I saw Eric's email, our former HR gentleman that was here, And he had confirmed on the record for us that, yeah, he did suggest that Matt's group go from 11s to 12s. Because that's those are salaries that need to jump. That's close to minimum wage. You could go and work fast food for that. No disrespect to fast food workers, because there's many good ones, but point being is, look, we've got to be competitive in the market.
Margo, from an HR perspective, I see a column there, it says that all but one of these have been reviewed by HR. What does that mean, reviewed by?
Well, in the past, it would have been that they would have probably come through HR and they would have done like some of the comparables, which is why I believe Tim mentioned that for theirs it was Eric. I've heard of some of these, but I wouldn't say that I've reviewed anything.
So it doesn't mean that HR has looked at it and concurs or recommends we do this or endorses it.
For some of them, I would say yes, and that would have been the past. For current, for what I've done, not for everything, no.
So if we want to know whether or not HR concurs and recommends one of these, it'd have to ask you on a case by case. Okay, well, I see the column and it's, it says reviewed by HR. Well, I didn't really know what that means, so you've answered it.
Is it approved, is it reviewed or approved by HR, I guess would be the question. And
Of course, HR
well, I mean, obviously it's
doesn't
been,
approve anything, but
I mean, I guess it
Well,
depends
I
on,
mean-
how you come
that's
up
why I
with it.
asked if it was recommended.
yeah, recommended, I guess would be the better word.
Yeah.
Oh, are you asking me another question?
Well,
Well, I'll ask you if the commissioner's block, if you're recommending those changes.
From what was presented to me, it made sense. It was identified that the position for the administrative services manager, for what that role would take on, kind of fit that grade as more of that office manager, taking on more of an assistant to Mike, was my understanding. Kind of fulfilling a role that like more of a department head or a manager would take on. That one made complete sense to me.
Is there another department that has a similar position that you could use as a comparator to help me see that?
Well, I mean, like, I know they're at a lower one, but like facilities has an assistant facilities director.
What grade is that?
I think he's at a 16, but I also know facilities director is at a much lower grade as well than some of the other directors.
Any other comparables? That one you said was a 16.
I don't remember where everybody's at. I know, like, even in the auditor's office, you have Matt, but you have people who run departments, like Tim runs a department. 20.
It's a public forum.
Okay, okay. I'm a 19, and I manage 25 people, and then I have 11 attorneys that I support with all of their travel, all of their CLEs, and everything like that. And I have the child support department, and I have the felony, juvenile, civil, criminal, and victim witness department that I manage. So Kelly Martin and I are similar as far as having that type of responsibility. So, and that's, so yeah, Kelly, and who else?
No, I said
Oh.
Kelly from district court.
Yeah, Kelly
It's
from
Fields
district
now.
court, so, sorry, yeah. So anyway, that's, I'm considered a 19, so if that's a helpful comparator.
no, it is helpful. I mean, like I said, I'm just looking for recommendations from the HR department, because we need to be fair and equitable, and take care of all of the employees, and it has nothing to do with the person that's in that position, or it's the position itself, and what are the standards for that position.
Well, and I agree, and I appreciate you bringing that up, because that's one of the things that the salary study is supposed to be doing.
Yep.
And we all, like, we're all discussing one position here, and I can adamantly feel the same way about a 13 that should be a 16. And that's the reason why we have the salary study that we're looking at. And we have been in agreement, I thought, as a county, that we weren't doing anything until a salary study was discussed.
That was
And
my understanding as
positions are
well.
not being, we're not gonna go to one office and say, okay, this position deserves this, without saying, looking at all the departments. And there are several departments in this room that has still not been looked at, and made any decisions where we've said, yes, these grade 13s should be a 14 or a 15. None of that has been decided, and so I understood from county administration that we weren't doing any of these one-offs anymore, that we are waiting for a salary study, we are going to complete that, and we are going to decide where the biggest needs are, where the critical needs are, and that office hadn't even been discussed when we were talking about very critical needs. And I know, as the treasurer said yesterday in the meeting, and I think others, is that our offices have been waiting and waiting. And we feel our people are just as invaluable as we're saying other employees in other departments. And until we make a decision countywide, I don't know what my employees are going to say again if we see more people getting moved up on the salary schedule and getting grade changes. And I have to go back and say to them, I'm sorry. I promise I come and I try to fight for you. And nothing happens, and I'm sorry. But then they say, well, why is it happening in other offices? We were told a salary study was, being done, and so that's my concern.
I share the same concern, and that was my understanding as well, and so that's why I'm bringing it up.
I share the same concern. You all remember I voted no on most of the one-offs on exactly that premise and that principle. There were a few I voted for because they were critical, time-sensitive, and I didn't think could wait. The vast majority I voted no for that specific reason. It's not fair. These ought to all be considered once we get the consor study and we can look at it and have a budget, know what we can afford. My goodness, even I didn't realize the scope of your responsibilities in year 19. Grades are established for positions and job responsibilities, not for individuals. And if your scope of responsibility and depth of responsibility is a 19, Commissioner's Office position is not a 19. It is, yours is a 22. There's no comparison in my mind.
And I thought that's why we were waiting for the study to be complete.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the intent. Ultimately, the board is the authority. So when, if an elected official or department head comes before you, you guys have, have that authority to say yes or no. So I don't know if Kelly's is a fair comparator. I know a few years ago, because we did some investigating, and Laura Stark from Public Works, she was kind of in a similar position as Jennifer, and she went from a 17 to a 19. So, that was some of the justification that we used to go that far. So just one example.
Isn't Laura the lead administrative talent for all of Public Works and Planning and Roads?
I don't know if you'd call it, I don't know if that's her official title, but, I know she has a pretty impactful role.
That's a very broad, very deep, their budget's massive.
Excuse me, I couldn't speak to what all our duties
Well, it was my understanding that the concert study was, to establish fair and equitable positions. And it has nothing to do with the individuals that may be in these positions or even their work ethic or the responsibilities. It's about being fair and equitable. And if everyone is asked to wait for the study to come out, then that would be my recommendation is to wait till that study is complete and make the evaluations then.
I totally respect that, and I do want to put on the record that, so the first portion, the at-risk positions, have been shared with all department heads and elected officials, so that, and then Carrie Locke, who's heading that part of the study, has been working individually with department heads and elected officials. So there's been a lot of information that's gone back and forth, and there's still parts that need to be done. So with that being said, there's going to be more information coming out. So ultimately, that's going to be your guys' decision whether, you want individuals to, get raises at this point, or you want to wait. Again, within the scope of my budget, Commissioner, I do want to put on the record also that we shrunk our office in order to make adjustments and be strategic. But with that being said, I understand the issues around the courthouse. I've worked with all our elected officials and Consor, and I know the challenges we face fiscally. So, I stand behind Jennifer. She's done a tremendous job. There's times when you have to have people in management positions and move them, just as Matt's battling for his people and Josie's battling for her people. We all care about the people in our offices,
Yeah.
but
And again,
I know there's fiscal constraints, though.
It has nothing to do with the individual, and
Yeah, absolutely.
it's about the position itself.
And I do want to let folks know that her job description would change, and I work closely with Margot on every facet that we were pitching here. And again, she wasn't necessarily signing off on it, but we were making sure there were comparative jobs that paid within that same range that were doing those type of job functions. So I want to let the public know, and our elected officials and department heads, we didn't just make something up and say, you should be paid that. We looked for parity in other jurisdictions and jobs that made sense. And, again, I want to let our elected officials and employees know that the fiscal impact of what she's making overtime, because we run so lean and we don't have 3 people that do her job, the fiscal impact ultimately would be $6,000 is what we've calculated.
Mr. Gonzalez, I've heard you talk quite a bit about how lean you operate and how you've shrunk your office. Refresh my memory, you started what month?
I started in March.
March. And so when you came into the office, inherited the office from Mr. Johnson, you had the county administrator position, the clerk to the board, and 1 admin, is that right?
We had a couple, we had
Full-time admin.
We had Shirley Jones, we had Shirley Stone, who I eliminated that position. We had Shirley Jones, who I've eliminated that position. So that's 2 people that are no longer in our department. So Shirley Jones's position was eliminated, but I do think Shirley has a lot of value. I like her. She's a good employee. We found her another position in Public Works. So it worked out really well. So we also have Civil Service and Jennifer, and we also have the Clerk of the Board.
So when you came in, there was a county administrator position and how many others?
Let's see, so we had County Administrator, Shirley Stone,
If we could just
Shirley
use-
Jones. Let's see. And I don't know, what was Shirley Stone's role? She was office assistant. So we had an office assistant. We had a project manager. We had, assistant to the county administrator. And we had the clerk of the board.
So Mr. Johnson didn't have a deputy county administrator that I recall. There was a position, but it was vacant. Is that how you remember it?
I heard rumors that there was a deputy that was in the works, but it never came to fruition because it didn't pay enough and you couldn't hire the right person. So that was sort of the narrative.
Yeah. So Shirley Jones has moved over to Public Works, so we're still paying her. It's just out of a different fund, right?
Well, it depends how you look at it, because the position has been eliminated from the county administrators.
You go to Public Works,
She has gone to Public Works, but
for a position that already existed over there.
yes.
Okay. So we weren't creating a position for her? in
No, we didn't
growing
create a
government.
position. There was a job that we thought she fit into well, and it worked out.
Right. And so when she was in the commissioner's office, she was overseeing HAPO and other activities, was she?
She was working with HAPO. She was doing some ARPA funding, basically overseeing, the payments and.
And who's
things
going to
of
be
that.
doing that now?
So it's going to be myself who's going to be working with HAPO quite a bit. I'll be working with the auditor's office with some of the ARPA funding, wrapping that up. So
So she doesn't have any more responsibilities as a project manager for anything at HAPO?
not at HAPO anymore.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Along with that, when I started here 15 years ago, almost 16, we had an HR director, and there was no one else in HR, just a director. And we had in the commissioner's office, we had a secretary to the administrator and a part-time clerk. So that was that way for a very long time. I don't know when it changed, but I know since I've been here, they had one full-time position as a clerical person for the county administrator and a part-time clerk. Which is, obviously we've grown, but that's just for memory. Just wanted to let you know. Our office, it hasn't grown.
I think the fair and proper thing to do is to quit extending the consort contract, get that work done, and then report out to all the employees and all the staff so everybody knows what's going on, make decisions about these positions, and do it in a way that obviously is fair and equitable to all of our employees, that puts the priorities of the county first. We should never forget that a lot of what we do is statutorily required. Some of what we do is not. And our priorities should go to the things that we have to do by law. And we should seek parity to make sure that people who are in 19s are similarly situated. The 19s that I'm acquainted with, I think, are much bigger and much broader jobs than the one proposed for increase in the commissioner's office. I've already spoken a fair amount about the PR government affairs position. I do not think that that's something that we can justify given what else we have for needs in the county. Would it be nice to have a position like that? Yeah, it might be. I come from that world, but I also have an awful lot of insight what happens over in Olympia. And I can tell you, having a government affairs position in your county government is not what's going to make the difference for you. Just isn't. There are other counties that have those, and with the exception of the big counties who can afford high-powered lobbyists, King, Pierce, Snohomish, that's not going to make a dent. And that position does not rate nearly as high as many of the other needs in the county. In fact, for all of the requests and requirements and needs that I've seen, I would put that one at the bottom of the list, countywide. It's not personal, it's just based on a lot of years' experience seeing what really makes legislation change and what doesn't. We can continue to lose prosecuting attorneys like we can a lot of other people if we don't fund them adequately. Just a reminder that with all due respect to people's backgrounds and training and credentials, there are some positions that are easier to fill when people walk out than others. And the difficult ones tend to be people with
doctorate level degrees, attorneys, people with CPA credentials or a lot of years of accounting experience. Those are the kinds of positions that really bite us hard and when those people leave. But I'm with Commissioner Mullen. We need to be fair first and foremost. We need to make the most of the county's resources, and we have made a commitment to our employees to get this study done and not to do any more of these one-offs until we do. And it looks like there's an effort right now to go back on that commitment. But this board has done that before, so.
Is there any estimated time when the study will be complete?
I would say February 1. I mean, we could have it, so give us the month of January because we've got a lot of requests from individual departments for specific jobs is what's happened. So, they want to, and when you get specific, you have to go find those specific jobs that align. So that's been the complex nature of, so the phase one of it's done, so we've identified, as Commissioner Peck alluded to, the at-risk positions. Those have all been shared with department heads and elected officials, so we understand where we're at. There's been a lot of one-offs done with individual departments, which the surprising thing to me, commissioners, was how much parity we actually have in many jobs, where there was some we thought were, I can't specifically cite the jobs now, but because there's been so much information shared, but there was a lot of parity. In terms of how much difference was being paid between a Yakima or a Chelan or so anyhow, that's just some anecdotal conversation to have. But yeah, February 1 would be the date I think is very reasonable, and probably earlier than that.
Will the description of Jennifer's job be put in there as much as she's completing right now? Civil service?
Yeah, she'll manage those functions. She'll manage all the civil service.
I'm asking, has it been presented to Connor, because she's taken on more responsibility as we went into this process? Have they been added to her description as her?
Or are you talking about
Jennifer?
Oh, okay.
In the commissioner's office.
Yeah, and I don't know some of the specific elements of. I'd have to go back and look to see what's been added, Jennifer, and feel free to jump in.
Yes.
What I'm doing as well.
So she would expand the scope of her current. She would continue her current duties and then.
Exactly.
expand.
I'm just
Yeah.
asking, has it been presented to Consor as that?
Oh,
Or
has
is
it
the-
pres-
what's been
no,
presented
we
is
haven't
how-
run it past. We haven't run any of these jobs past Consor at this
Okay,
point.
okay.
So
All right, then, so it can be presented to.
yeah, absolutely, it can be.
Well, that sounds like a more fair and equitable position to take, and it puts us in an awkward position. I think Jennifer does a great job, but it's more about the position itself and waiting for the study to be done.
I think we all understand, Commissioner, and it's tough.
So are we saying then the whole list, we're going to wait for Consor?
Well, I wholeheartedly, respectfully disagree with Commissioner Peck on the government affairs person. It's where we're lacking. It's really about legislative priorities. I know he spent a lot of time with WASAC, but they have broad priorities for the state, and we can hone in on our legislative priorities. We've worked in a lobbying firm into a budget that's affordable. You need these things. It's an investment that you have to make. It's like having a car and never going to Jiffy Lube and getting a oil change. You have to have a legislative presence, and WASAC respectfully does not wholeheartedly do the job for us. I think they do a great job on a state level, but not honing on. We've already identified legislative priorities. That's never been done here at Franklin County.
So, Mr.
Our
Gonzalez,
legislative priorities.
That's actually not correct, but let's go ahead and have this friendly discussion. Do you think that OPD funding is a core priority for this county?
Absolutely, that's one
Can
of our
you tell me
legislative
where that
priorities.
fits? Can you tell me where that fits on the WASAC list of legislative priorities?
Well, WASAC didn't present any of the legislative priorities this year.
Can you tell me where that fits on WASAC's priority list for this year? There is a list.
Well, it might be a
I've
priority.
spoken to it in
You
this
asked
meeting.
me if they have legislative priorities. They don't.
That's not what I asked. I
this
asked, do
year.
you know where it fits on WASAC's priority list?
Of course, it's very high, and we
It's number
appreciate
one.
their service.
Who is suing the legislature right now on behalf of this county and other counties over this issue? WASAC is.
And
Can you
Commissioner,
tell
I
me- no,
understand
excuse
that,
me.
but that's a whole separate issue. That's one issue. We're talking about legislative priorities.
So what we're talking about is your premise that Franklin County is not being adequately served for our specific legislative concerns by WASAC. And
That
I'm
is one
asking,
legislative concern,
I'm
not all
asking-
of ours.
I'm asking you, do you know what WASAC's legislative policy list is or what its priorities list is? Either one. Are you familiar with either one?
I'm absolutely familiar with this. I
Okay,
gotta go
please tell
along.
me what's the top three.
It doesn't matter because you're conflating the issue. I understand their priorities. I understand their function. I was a lobbyist on behalf of
Our
Franklin
priorities
PED.
are their priorities.
I-
The lists are the same. Tell me what's on
Absolutely,
our, tell me
but-
what's on our list, and I'll tell you if it's on theirs.
Okay, HAPO Center funding.
Yes. In fact,
That's false, and you know it.
let me
Commissioner.
finish. Let me finish. Funding for county-specific projects is lobbied for by WASAC representatives, and if you don't think so,
I
talk
don't think
with,
so.
talk with Commissioner Delvin about where the money came from for the juvenile justice, the several $1 million. He and I both, through WASAC, lobbied for that with WASAC support. That's one of their agendas, is to support
Okay, I will
county
call
level.
WASAC Monday to see if they have, in fact, lobbied on behalf of HAPO. I don't think that's the case.
Try to twist the words. What else? Anything else that is a priority here?
How about regional emergency communication? That's one of our priorities.
And WASAC hasn't addressed that for you?
You tell me.
Yeah, they actually have. So I'll tell you what, let me just recommend that you touch base with WASAC and you ask them if any of these issues, if they're available to support and lobby for, directly or indirectly. And you might,
It's
just to
it's indirect
verify.
lobbying. I
just
mean,
to-
I've been a part of lobbying with the city of Pasco. I was the primary lobbyist for Franklin PED.
Spare
And
me
I-
the,
and I-
spare
and
me
I
the
understand.
credentials. I
mean,
lobbied the
understand
U.S.
it.
Congress too, but that
That's
doesn't mean that I'm an
wonderful.
expert.
I mean, that's wonderful. That
So-
is wonderful.
I would ask you or invite you to also coordinate with Commissioner Delvin about local priorities and WASAC's support for those. So it is there, and whether we've made full advantage of them or not, we could argue that. I could say, no, we probably haven't. But to suggest that the only way it can happen is for us to hire a full-time person to do this is a misnomer. And you're
Because-
certainly entitled to your opinion. I'll put my 15 years as a commissioner and co-chair of WASAC Ledge Steering Committee on the table, and we can just agree to disagree. But you don't need that position. That is not the highest, excuse
do
me,
because
that is
the
not the
time they
highest
spend here-
priority for this county. It's just not.
It absolutely is a really high priority because they'll deal with TRIDEC, they'll deal with the city of Pasco, they'll deal with Congressman Newhouse's office, with Senator Murray's office. They'll work with, respectfully, BF Cog handling NOFOs and notice of funding opportunities. These are all elements we are completely missing that WASAC not in a million years would pick up that service for it because I know.
Those are not WASAC functions, and I'm at those tables you just listed.
I haven't seen you there.
Well, then you're at the table?
I've been there too. Yeah, absolutely.
Which one?
All of them. I've been in this market 5 years again. I've been at all of them.
Yeah. Well, as
Was
the
it-
chair of the Council of Governments, I haven't seen you there, but thanks.
So the question, WASAC, did it not suspend all legislative activities for the year? Or which organization did that?
Well, that's the Washington Association of Counties. I mean, they're an ongoing entity. I mean,
But did they not suspend all legislative activities for the year?
I don't think so. Not
They
that
did
I'm aware
not.
of.
Oh, okay.
Josie had a question.
Josie, please.
So going back to, can I just have clarification on what the study is going to do for the salary, Mike? for.
Well, and I think that issue's been a little bit conflated too, because in order to give salary bumps and things of this nature, or what, you know, you have to have, you have to talk to Tim Anderson, because there has to be money available. I think throughout the process, it's given more clarity in certain areas, certainly, from a parity standpoint, but you still have to make the numbers match. I think one of the issues for Josie's office are her employees at 12s, based on other jurisdictions, should they be working at a higher level, or being paid more. So that's the issue.
Yeah, but like I said yesterday, Eric gave me the recommendation that I couldn't move my 12s until the whole county, because it was a
Right,
union.
and I saw
So-
Eric's email, and he had CBA issues and, morale issues around the courthouse if it was a one-off, and, because I saw the email that he sent yesterday to all of us, and I was thinking were you not? So, and, because he had confirmed that he had recommended moving Matt's 11s to 12s, and had suggested that you hold off on moving your personnel because of union issues and things of that nature.
So I'll go on record saying that I'm okay with the 11s being moved to the 12s. And I'm not asking for any additional funds this year for any salary at all. I'm asking for the $11,000 for postage and printing for, to be able to continue to send out tax statements. So, and I'm just saying, if we're going to move, Eric suggested that we move as a group of 12s to wherever they need to go. So,
And I believe there's only 2 positions that are 11s right now that, in the courthouse, that can be moved to 12s? Both are in-
Correct. As far as I know, there's the two in our office. There's some budgeted positions in Public Works. I do believe in County Roads, but I think all of those are vacant.
Vacant.
From last I saw on my list anyway. I'd hate to put Margot on the spot.
No, I have to go look it up, sorry. I was focused on grade 9s and 10s, not really 11s lately, so I don't. There's actually not any more 9s, but there are some positions that are on a grade 10, yes. They're part-time.
It could behoove us to go through this list one by one, just because not all of these would be requesting changes in a existing position. Some of them are, there's new position requests, as well as changing from one position to another existing position. And, for example, the one we were talking about before, the prosecuting attorney moving from a senior DPA to a chief deputy prosecuting attorney. So it's an already established position. And so and there was discussions yesterday, there was discussions on the assessor's position, so I added that to the list. These are not currently in the budget, but these would be good ones to discuss as well, to get some clarity on what the board wants to do.
Commissioners?
John, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your comment. What did you say?
I said I'm more than willing to do that. If you want to take it down the list and start with me again.
I think anybody that's here that wants to speak to any of these should take the opportunity.
More than willing to go in alphabetical order. I addressed the commissioners yesterday. You certainly heard what I had to say as far as the positions and why. I did submit to all of you today an adjustment proposal to be able to draw out and delay the GIS cartographer. Part of the reason is it's going to take 8 weeks or so even to get a desk ordered in and chair, that kind of stuff. So there's no reason in filling that position, and it's going to take time to even try to find the right position on that.
As you're giving your comments, could you also speak to the issue of waiting to hear from Consor, whether or not that would be problematic for you?
Well, oh yeah, absolutely, because mine are not a wage study change. These are additional positions or staffing, not changing somebody in the assessor's office that's say they're a deputy assessor. It's not changing them from a 14 to a 15. I'm not requesting that. These are the appraiser position already is rated. It's a 17. It's already, job description's already approved. The GIS cartographer specialist position, that this job description has to come before the commissioners for approval, but it's been through 3 HR directors already written up. There's been no changes to that suggested. And before that position could be filled, that job titling has to be approved by the commissioners. I'd bring that in January, and we wouldn't be looking at moving that according to my adjusted proposal until February anyway, and that would be in-house on that. So certainly if you've got any more questions, I know I keep seeing the thing not currently included, and I know there's been at least 2 of you that have said we ought to include it. So I don't know how much more I can push, pull, prod, deliver papers. You guys have to make the decision. And I'm certainly here to answer any questions you may have on it so you can make what I think an informed one.
Well, a majority of the board has said it should be included. Mr. Anderson, I'd like you to include it. What do you need?
No, I can add it. That was my understanding from yesterday too. I thought I had 2 votes for, I believe the ag appraiser position. I think was the two yeses on. I'm not sure about the GIS cartographer or not. But I wasn't going to go through the exercise of adjusting the budget when we had some other things that were still being discussed as well yesterday. I was pretty certain that I was hearing a yes yesterday on this, but
And
like I say, I just
tried
didn't
to get
wanna
in and sharpen the
adjust
pencil real tight early this morning. That's why I sent all of you an email, and then during the commissioners meeting gave you all a copy of it. Certainly getting another budget savings there of $32,000 without any additional budget money that would roll back over into the general fund that we wouldn't be using this year. So that had not been discussed in the initial proposal, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to get in there and we're going to be realistic on when we could fill a position, how long it'll take, how long it takes to get supplies in and so forth. So certainly it stretches it out a little bit. Yes,
What
sir.
happens if you don't have a GIS cartographer?
At the point that ours retires, this county would be forced to try to even get a consulting firm in to do it at least 4 times the amount of money from what I've been told from other counties that had to do
Let's
it.
say you can't do that. What happens if we don't execute that
We will be in
function?
violation of major statutory requirements for the mapping, segregations, adding on any developer whatsoever, city annexations, all of that will be literally ground to a halt.
So this is a statutory required function.
It is.
We can either do it with an employee or we can do it with a contractor, if we can find a contractor, and if we can, it's much more expensive.
It
That
is.
to me sounds like a high priority position that the county has real jeopardy if we don't fill it. I started working with Robin when I first became a commissioner, so I'm more than acquainted with that function. And that's why I asked that line of questions.
Yep.
I think both those positions are critical. The first one because it pays us back and we stop losing revenue that we could be getting. And the second one for the reasons I just stated.
Right. And again,
I
that
would
person's
invite
going to
my fellow
retire, so we've got to have
commissioners to
somebody
join
to
me.
get in there.
I would invite my fellow commissioners to join me in saying that those 2 need to be in the budget for those reasons. Now, how they actually get graded and filled and funded, I think is something we can, especially in this case, and should see the Consor study. I know there are established grades.
Right,
But
right.
I-
Oh, and should they change that, I think that if there's a change to it with Consor, that's fine. I just think that right now we need to bring them in based on what it would currently be.
the first one costs us money if we don't. The second one, we violate the law if we don't. To me, it's pretty easy. They need to be on the list.
Correct.
With the new growth, are you looking at numbers of units or are you looking at dollars?
Well, there's two factors to that. One is there's massive numbers of increase of units. The other one is the complexity of certain specific ones that are number-driven. So for instance, Amazon is 2 parcels. That's pretty complex, 2 parcels. It's different than 2 vacant lots. Darigold is 2 parcels. Now, the area out, the new development area out where the new big apartment complexes, the 8 stories and all of that are going in there, it was maybe 13 parcels. It's now like 89 that's in that TIF in that area. But we add approximately 525 to 550 new parcels, most of them with some type of a roof or structure every single year. And Pasco is looking at a growth rate of just residential of over 1,100 a year for the next 20 years, just for the city limits.
And you physically look at those once out of every 6 years.
We physically look at every bit of it on construction, and then once every 6 years, we have to physically be out doing it, but every single year, the statistics are looked at on every single individual type. So yeah, I mean, in 6, 7 years, it's highly probable that, yeah, there'll be more demands, just simply because of growth. And new construction is on every single piece on that.
Well, the reason why I ask is because when you talk units or dollars, I mean.
Yeah, it's both. It really is.
You know, a house 5 years ago that was 200,000 is now 450,000 or
Correct.
higher. So I believe that when you look at the dollar value, it could be confusing because the work is the same on the same amount of units.
Yep, we
Dollar.
just have more units and more complexity and more dollars. It's, every one of those has changed. That's why I said it is both.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
On those Amazon buildings, how are those being handled currently? Because they're not filled, right? They're not utilizing them?
We have no control what Amazon does with their building.
No.
We assess the value of it as to what is the market value of that building.
Are we collecting taxes on that building?
But you did, and you will.
Okay.
I mean, they had a certain percentage of it done last July, which went into, the payments for this year, and this year's the new construction will figure in for next year. So yes, every piece of property that we pick up in new construction is taxed.
Okay.
Every
That
piece
was my
of property.
question, is if we're taxing them on the completion that they're at that point.
Only if they're complete. They weren't complete a year ago when we did new construction, they weren't complete. Are they 100% complete as of July this year for next year's tax base? The structures are 100% complete. The components for personal property contents inside are not complete.
Right.
Those we look at as January 1st at technically noon. What personal property did they have in there, i.e. racks, shelving, computers, desks, chair, all that kind of stuff. Same thing we do for the ag community, for the farmers. Same thing.
So since 2011, we've added 3 positions, and you said we're behind. When this booming craze, and it will subside and probably stall out like we've seen in the past, these positions that we've added, will they be eliminated if the new construction ceases to be as robust as it is today?
New construction may diminish, and it may not. I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball either. I just know
Well,
what
you're
it's
giving
done.
us projected years out there and how
I'm
much money we're going to
projecting
miss
based
out
on
on.
what the experts for the city of Pasco are projecting and for growth, okay? I'm using their data
So if it
to tell
does,
you what their growth is.
if it does go the other way, are we eliminating
We still have a minimal amount that has to be done. I still had a minimum staff that we needed when I came in here 3 years ago before we had $500 million new construction. We still have 35, 36, 37, 40,000 parcels that still have to be looked at once every 6 years and evaluated every year. If the economy turns down, we have just as much work reducing the assessed value as we do in increasing the assessed value. We have to look at every piece of property. So as far as the numbers, that could be the same. Now, if new construction dies out and we don't have it, and we don't have work for our appraisers, then I don't have work for the appraisers. I don't need them.
So they'll be eliminated.
If I don't need them. So. Yeah, I'm not going to have dead weight.
How much overtime do you have in your office currently?
We have never had overtime until this year. And this year I had to authorize some. I was very cautious in it. I even met with Tim and said, Tim, I got no choice. I've got exempt employees that are putting in massive amounts of hours at no compensation. I'm going to have to work some of my staff into overtime. So I did for a couple of weeks. I worked about half the staff in overtime. It was very minimal dollar impact to us, and I kept it within my budget. So we did not have to come to you and ask for any budget adjustments, changes. I kept it within my budget. We absorbed it in areas from the budget to be able to do that.
Just over $1,000 just on the salary
Yeah,
side.
it was pretty minor. Very minor.
Before benefits.
But again, that was not taking into consideration my exempt employees and all the hours. I mean, one of them went 5 weeks without a day off, including Saturday and Sunday. And that's not counting the number of hours they were putting in trying to keep up with it. So that just, yeah. And I'll guarantee you I was more than 40 hours a week.
Well, I do notice that you're usually one of the first people here, if not the first.
I rarely get beat. It does happen, but rarely. I mean, a couple of years ago, Commissioner Didier used to get in here by 5 with me a lot of times, and we'd be racing to get in the back door.
Well, there are others as well. I just don't
Yep.
recognize
There
your
are,
car when I come in.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah, there's times where I have to move my rig because they're blowing the, John, move, get out of here, would you? We're trying to do some work. That happens, so.
So I've heard 2 yes votes on the ag appraiser position. I've heard 1 on the GIS cartographer position.
I think we hold off on that until early next year. Now, are we talking about the new person that's going to come in that Robin's going to train?
Well, this would be her moving her position that would then open up the door for us to bring somebody in. And my proposal is that I wouldn't bring that person in until April 1. That was in the proposal that I just gave to you today.
I see that.
What that allows me to do is get a desk and stuff ordered. That takes 2 months anymore to get those things. So if I wait till March or April to order that, because that's when you're waiting to approve it, then I'm into June or July to get the equipment they need to even do any work.
So that desk, is it for the appraiser position or the GIS?
The GIS.
Well, won't they just simply take Robin's desk?
Robin's still here,
I know, but she's leaving, right?
but I need them trained by her. I need 2 desks. I need them working side by side.
I understand that.
So, yeah, they can't have her desk if she's using her desk.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. That's
I'm
why I'd
assuming
have to get that
The
ordered.
majority of that is probably the computer and the equipment.
It is,
rather than so just the
actually,
desk.
it's about 50-50, the computer and the phone system versus the desk and chair.
So what are you gonna do with that desk once Robin leaves? I guess that's the other question.
Well,
I mean, it's-
we'll have
if
to
you're
wait and
spending
see
half
what the
that-
needs are by that time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? You know, I have a desk right now that I can put the appraiser in that I'm requesting because we had 1 spare desk in there.
All right,
If I get the appraiser position, I lose that, so this would give me that spare desk for future growth.
just
So-
asking. It sounds like an expensive desk for a
They're the
training
cheapest
session.
we can get, believe me.
Training session.
It is amazing when you have to go out for contract and what they get.
This letter I got this morning, December 6th, says approval of internet posting, to post February 1st.
I'd post it, but it gives me 2 months
Says
to be able to
filled
find.
February 1st, 2024.
No, it doesn't say filled.
To be filled, February 1st, 2024.
No, that is the new position, Robin moving into it. That is not the position of the new person coming in to be trained. We're waiting till April 1 to fill that. Okay? That would be April 1 for the person that she would be training.
There is no April 1 on that sheet, so it says March,
Oh,
April.
okay, standard or, no, that's the DES.
What is the likelihood of finding a GIS cartographer in a short amount of time?
Well, that's why I put in here to start posting in February and trying to fill it in April, and you're right. I don't have the month April in there, but I do have the fact that it's back 6 months from October, which would be April. And that is in number 4 on your sheet. So what I would do is start posting for that position the first part of February. I would order the desks immediately, which will take 2+ months. I will then start interviewing, if we get applicants, sometime March-ish, and the hopes to bring somebody on board in April, if we can even get qualified applicants to fill it. I really am concerned about even getting that caliber of person through the interview process to a point to where we could even make an offer by April. It easily could be beyond that time. But it certainly would not be before April 1st, bringing somebody on board. So I'll put that on the record here, even though I said 6 months there, back from October. Yeah.
Then the new position that you're creating will be a bump of 9,000 to Robin. Is she going to give us a pretty good affirmative that she's going to stay
Yes, I've already got it. I've
till
already got that
October?
verbal. I can't lock somebody in any more than verbal, and she's
Right.
never done anything but honor her word in 33 years of working here.
Incredible.
Yeah,
Yes.
she is good.
Yes.
You've all worked with her, you know.
Yeah.
And what this does then is it simply, we're creating her, moving it into a supervisory training position. The new person doesn't take this position once Robin leaves. They don't just get promoted into this position. They're in the tech position, and if that's all they're qualified for, that's all they will ever fill on that.
The military turns out people with those requirements, don't they?
Yep, and I absolutely hope we could find somebody like that to get them in and then have them trained, because there's nobody that you can bring in from the outside, even a consulting firm, that can step right in and just begin doing it. They just can't do it. They spin their wheels for a while, quite a while, in fact,
Does that
on that.
200 and, is it 209, 370? Does that reflect the adjustments that you gave us in this
No,
paper?
it does not reflect 32,000 in adjustments,
Or the 40?
Correct.
or the 40, it does
So-
not. There's
so-
$72,000 there on this adjustment that I
So that
gave
would
you,
lower
that
it
does
down.
not reflect.
That was for 2 new positions when.
Yes.
When the
Of the
prelim budget was
original
submitted.
time frame, filling them in January and everything else. That's not delaying it and doing that. So it would be a less of an impact by $70,000,
Yes.
okay?
Okay.
As of what I could come up with at 5:30 this morning, running numbers for you folks.
Thank you.
All right. So the GIS, that all we're asking is to move Robin into the new position?
Currently, yes. And then be able to post in February for that the person to get trained and bring them on in April.
So it still would be 2 new positions.
It still would be
because-
2 positions, yes. It would still be 2 positions. It's just we wouldn't fill the one until April. And then, of course, once she's gone, you got 2 months that you don't have that higher salary of her in the specialist position either. That's part of that 32,000, because at least the past 2 months, you don't have that.
Positions, but only one new one.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah, one new created type, yeah. Yeah,
We'll have 2 positions from April 1 through October.
correct. Yes, there would be 2, one from January to the end of the year and one extra one from April 1 through October. Or whatever the day in October is. It might be the 1st, it might be the 20th. I don't have that exact date.
because the intent is Robin's position wouldn't go away after she's gone. There'd still be
I
another.
don't think we would have that person qualified to move into the specialist position. They'd stay at the tech position. That would be the intent.
Depends on what level you hire into that position.
That is correct. Right now, I'd post at the bottom end at a step one. If we can't get people in at that and it's going to require something more, I'd have to come to your commissioners and say, I need a step 3 or something considered.
Ideally, you can find someone who is fully qualified or nearly so, and they overlap with Robin for several months. and
That's 6
You've got a
months.
seamless transition.
That's my hope. If everything is in a perfect world, that's what will happen.
Very strategic approach.
Yes, that's what I'm attempting to do.
Step 1, grade what?
16, grade 16.
They started at grade 16, step 1.
Well, unless I come before you commissioners, because I
good.
can't fill it at that, yes.
Okay.
That's the current position, what it is. Yeah. And it's highly likely that's a highly trained, as Commissioner Mullen was mentioning about coming out of the military and that, or definitely somebody with like a 4-year degree out of college was specializing in GIS and cartography. So,
Well, I mean, Robin's leaving.
yes.
So it only makes sense to me that we fill that position.
Yeah,
Because-
and you've all worked with her. You know how difficult it's going to be to find somebody that can fill them shoes.
I do.
I am not looking forward to it. Every one of you has worked with her and had her get things for you, do things for you, and she's just phenomenal. So, yeah.
So correct me if I'm wrong, I think I'm hearing 2 yeses on the assessor package of what was submitted.
Did you get a confirmation on that?
Yeah, I would vote yes.
Okay,
Any other questions for me? I'll get out of your hair.
we'll move down to the auditor.
Okay.
The auditor? Oh,
I'm sorry, Commissioners. I've
nope,
got a thing. If we
Hey,
can
we-
address
we understand.
the prosecutor's office is asking to move a senior DPA from a grade 21 to a grade 22. This is an issue I brought before the board like a month or 2 ago. This is a gentleman who handles all of our appeals. To keep someone in-house who is able to do those appeals, we need a more competitive salary. And if we lose this gentleman, it'll cost you a lot more than $7,000 a year. He is actively involved in training another in-house person to take his spot because he's close to retirement. But that will take some time. We would like some overlap with him still working here before a newer person taking that responsibility on. Are there any questions?
So for clarification, maybe I misunderstood or misheard you. This grade 21 to a grade 22, he's retiring?
No, not
Okay.
today.
All right. No, I
I'm sure
just-
if you asked him, he would say, I'm going to be good for another 5 years. But
Okay,
he's,
all right.
he's over,
I misunderstood what I heard you say.
I
Yeah.
don't want to say how old he is, but yeah, he's
No, I
he's
didn't.
in the age where
Now I'm
any
really
rational
confused.
person would be thinking about retirement.
So we have an irrational appeals attorney?
He loves his job. If you think the auditor's in here early or staying late, if you kept track of this gentleman's hours, he's always.
Well, it's been correctly stated that we should look at these positions for the nature of the work, the scope of responsibilities, the depth, not who's in them. So if this gentleman retired tomorrow and we went to hire someone, could we get someone who would be adequately able to handle these responsibilities? Could we get them at a 21, or would we need a 22? Or a 23?
If he were to retire tomorrow, which he better not, my guess is we would be looking at hiring outside counsel because it would be impossible to fill his spot without training up someone internally. And that adds up quickly.
All right, thank you.
If I heard you correctly, though, this position's already been granted, or?
Yes, I brought a proposal before the three of you, and you voted on it about a month ago, I think.
Yeah, so it's,
I'm not sure why it's on here.
Well, it was in the budget request, and so now we're just approving. And I think that
Yeah.
you were just asking us to go through each of them.
yes,
So, okay.
yeah, it's already been approved, so,
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Are there any questions?
nope.
Thank you.
I only got one other one. I wrote on one of them, so I don't have one for all of you. You can look.
Here, yeah, that I looked at it already.
I'll use my time to say, this has been the most interesting budget process since I got here. I think this right here illustrates part of what Kelly brought up, and part of what, one of the challenges that I've noticed as an elected of one of the, I've got 18 employees. I know there's some with bigger, but I'm in an administrative function. And one of the things I hope this board does, I've been hoping it for 13 years, is establish a process by which you address, and it would take a little bit of work, but you address what you review and how you do it and what category it falls in, so that, I got to tell you right now, and this right here illustrates it. This is, the budget here that started in '07, which was prior to when Mr. Peck got here, had 11 employees, and through 2021, had 11 employees. It grew from, 650 to 1 million. And then from 21 to today, it goes from 1 million to 1.5 million and adds 40% or 37, whatever, percent more employees. And what I would say is that, obviously and now you're adding more employees. You guys have a difficult job, but it's also difficult for us out here when someone who goes, it seems like what should happen is you establish the revenues, you establish priorities, and then you can classify things within that. It'd be good for all of us because we're competing for limited dollars. And so the assessor goes first, and that was his budget that I just explained, and it's all on the auspice we're missing out on something, and I'm competing for those same limited dollars I have. Instead of new people, I have people that are the 11s and 12s, and somehow there wasn't like an open process where you come in and say, somehow customer service, the lowest paid person in the assessor's function is a 14. I lost employees to that. And I would argue, and there's a lot of faith being put in Consor, everyone throws that out. I think we're all hoping it's what it is, but I had the same hope for Gallagher, and I had the same hope for some poor woman. I think she got cancer and we brought it back inside. Government tries this over and over. This is a torturous process listening to this, because if you evaluate just his decision, well, it's going to make sense. He's telling you it's going to bring in money and all of that. But when you measure it against, people who have been sitting in in the auditor's office or in the treasurer's office, or all of them. So for me, it's difficult. He gets to go first. Everyone looks at it, oh, it's reasonable. And then in the end, when you guys go to balance this, you got to find the money. And then when it starts to go down, that's why I came out and I said what I said about all of our different relationships that cost money. I look at things mostly from the money side, and even on these choices here, they should be a classification of, are these typical, in this group of customer service, right, that you have at every level? Everybody in here will come in and argue, well, my people they're better than this because they haven't ran that department. And I've sat back, like I said, I've lost employees to IS. I've lost employees to all these different places. I placed a lot of faith in the process. Apparently I didn't juice my job descriptions enough to get the grades moved because I didn't want to play that game. I said, if you do it, write it. If you don't, don't. But we all know that all these positions, whether it's in the commissioner's office, when people leave, when people go on, that's part of the deal is you try to cover and make things work. So it's called management. And so when I look at this and I'm like, the thing is the claim they can bring in more money. I'm wondering from '07 to 21, how much money did we miss? How much new construction didn't get included? And where's the analysis of all of that, right? I mean, you're talking from 11 employees for for however many, is this a management issue, or what is this? Because all of a sudden, this board, this county has, in 3 years, hired, since 20, you've hired 40% more employees and gone from 927,000 to 1.5 million, and you're adding 2 more now. I'm like, wait a minute, there's activity, I agree. How does that, when you fund that, how are you going to fund all these, these changes in bi-county needs in the sheriff's office? So here's what I'm here to advocate for. These ones here, when I come before you with these are funded by the state. That should be a category if there's funding tied to it that's actually coming into the county. That should be a category, and anywhere that happens, I would support that. The promises that we're going to generate money with these, well, here's what I want to do. In 6 months, I want to know the number now, and I want to know the number then for all of us, because we're competing for limited funds. And everybody pays attention to what everybody else is doing in here. When you look at Kelly as a 19, and then you compare it to, and that was a lot. That's a lot of people. I don't know, but then you got to have somebody impartial dig into that. And it's just, this is probably my one opportunity to tell you this. It's been, I need to go back to sales school for crying out loud. I used to sell copiers, and I need to get in here and push harder for this, because we have needs too, and I know you guys know it, but we're accountants, and the treasurer's got accountants, clerk has, everybody's the same thing, and it's I don't envy your positions at this point, despite my 2 runs to try to get in one of those chairs. It's easy to do when money's coming in. It's going to be, people are going to be looking at you sideways when the process is whoever goes first gets yes, and whoever doesn't. So I don't know what your revenue number is. I don't know what you're pushing up against. I mean, we can fudge stuff, but, obviously it's estimates, but my positions, like I said, have money coming in on them, and I would gladly work on a committee that would, with people from all these offices, to find a way, because everybody will bring forward things they've seen. Some offices, the lowest one's a 14, right? Some offices, and it all makes sense. I used to do this with Public Works. That's why all the accountants in Public Works are at 16. We call it the land of milk and honey. And the reason it was done was, and people, by the way, stuff in the commissioner's office, somehow in the general sense is that stuff gets, because it's proximity. You work close with them, you know them personally, you know their value personally. Well, everyone in here knows the same thing. And so my hope is a process that comes out of this. In this case, I'm lucky. I stood before you with my hat in hand, I think, on elections. Thankfully, elections has more pass-through than it's ever had. But when the time comes, if there's less money, I hope there is an agreed-upon, very understandable process that shows your priorities, categorizes things, because my suspicion is this consort study is not going to, there's still going to be difficult decisions for you guys when this thing comes back. It's not going to tell you exactly what to do. You're still going to have to say, what's my priority? And in this case, your priority's been the assessor's function since 2021. And so, good. I mean, you've made those choices, and they're the real deal. But, everyone's got the same challenges. So mine are, like I said, have all been, they were funded through the money that comes in. And the moves have to do with the fact that I have to send people out of the office. I'm grateful that DOL sends us that $123 a year, because I hope it's easy to make that decision, and it also helps, in the current expense fund others. So, thank you.
So, Mr. Beaton, you and I have agreed on a lot of things over the years, and we probably disagreed on an equal number. Today, we're in complete agreement. I think that the county should have a clearly articulated, written set of priorities about how we go about analyzing each of these requests, and it should not be, and I know Mr. Rosendahl meant this in jest, it shouldn't be alphabetical. It shouldn't be who comes up first. So for my part, I'll tell you what my criteria are and what I use. I look first to see, is this funded by somebody else, principally the state? If it is, it's a no-brainer, with the condition that if the funding goes away, the position needs to go away unless there's other discussion and we determine that it's critical and we need to keep it and fund it. Second tier is whether or not it's statutorily mandated. We're going to break the law if we don't do it. Third category is it self-funded? Maybe it's not statutorily required, but it's a function that we can demonstrate is going to bring in enough revenue to the county to pay for itself and then have a collateral benefit with it. Case in point is legal and financial obligations. We added a position for the clerk's office because there were LFO obligations that were not being collected. And he insisted that he was able to collect more than enough to pay for those positions. And we've gone back and revisited that. I have doubts that they are in fact paying for themselves, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't have any numbers to audit. But for a time, at least through COVID, we were really backing off on making collections. So I'm confident in that period we weren't breaking even. So that was the third category, was the self-funded. Next are high-risk, high retention, difficulty kind of positions, like the very experienced appeals attorney that we have in the prosecutor's office, and the fact that if we lose that person, if we don't compensate them reasonably and we lose them, what's the consequence? And it's the high-risk consequence that puts it into fourth position. After that, everything is a nice to have, and that's where a lot of the discussion happens. But the reality is, as you and I both know from having been here for a long time, by the time you get through those first four, there really isn't much room for nice to have. So I appreciate your perspective on it. I agree.
So you're a yes on those positions since it's funded by the state?
Funded by the state, I support them.
Good.
Yep.
Again, in the end, these things are going to, there's going to be a classification that comes up. It always does throughout the year, retention, all these different things you all talked about. I mean, we're going to need something left in contingency to address, or maybe more things in contingency, and you guys are going to have to make a lot more difficult decisions throughout the year. I mean, that's what I would like to see. Everyone in here is going to have things they asked for they're not going to get. And so it's some need they identified by their position. And, you know, and again, I was over a barrel when I lost my elections director to the assessor. That's how that was mispriced, right? Well, you guys, we fixed that. But I mean, again, that stuff's going to continue to happen. OPDs, who knows? When I came into office, there was the PA at that time had a case where they tried to extradite something. It was blowing a hole in our budget for, I don't know, a year or two. I can't remember that. And we were waiting for a refund from the state. This stuff goes on and on and on. I think what I hope we get out of this board is, as we start to crest and potentially head down, we have a lot more form that we have to hold to. And so that's what I hope, because when you move individuals, there should be an open period where everybody can put their stuff in, and whether it's HR or an outside entity can actually look at those things objectively. That's the equity, because we can all, it's like elections. If the things run right, everybody will live with the outcome. If it's not, the room's filled with people worried about who's talking first. And so it's not fun sometimes. So anyway.
Well, this is why we've asked Tim to come in on a monthly report of our revenues.
Well, I can speak to that.
We're going to probably be evaluating throughout the year on
We
where
can,
we're at.
and we need, I mean, we will provide the numbers. I'll speak to that, but I mean, we have to install software. We will make him as available as we can, or someone. Ideally, we'll be sending the reports, and we can train Mike how to pull reports and generate reports. I know there's been a desire in the commissioner's office to have some level of financial analyst in the past. It's all a matter of priorities for the board and what they do. We will most certainly do the best we can, but Tim is the director of finance for the whole place, and he himself has, I don't know how many under him off the top of my head, but the point is, yes, we are going to need to collaborate a lot more and be looking at the numbers and have agreed upon, we made a presentation earlier, and people have different views of how they see the numbers. You're just going to have to decide where you're going to get your numbers from and use those numbers. And if there's, something else short of, everybody has a different view, even on a number, unfortunately. So that's something we have to work through as a county. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Was that a yes as a group on those state-funded positions?
Yes.
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 So even without the study, we're gonna
Did you hear the argument that they're doing outside audits? People are leaving the office and it's state funded, it's paid for, plus we're going to put more money into the general fund?
This next one is the elections. This is a position that already exists outside of current expense. The desire is to move it into current expense, as mentioned before. It's one it's currently paid in our election equipment revolving fund. Has nothing to do with election equipment or anything like that, and so it makes more sense in current expense. And at this point too, we are getting we're getting reimbursed by the state on every year as well now. So ultimately, if we took this out as it's currently in, if you took it out, you'd also be removing the funding that goes with it. That it would have to be moved to the election equipment of revolving to match where we're paying this.
It's basically accounting cleanup. I mean, you don't have to do it. This actually was something that my predecessor had done. We had a statutory responsibility. There was no money. I think she just plugged them into this and did that. We've been advised by the SAO, it's not in the right spot. We've been doing this for years. Whether we used to pay in advance, we slowly but surely just tried to clean the books up. So, this is a cleanup piece. So, and like you said, if you take it out, the revenue that's associated with it will. And I don't know that it's 100% of it, but it's I don't know how it all works. So I think it's a wash, or what is it?
It would be a large percent of it. I mean, it depends on. It depends on what Franklin County's allocation ultimately is in any given year. It's going to be a higher percentage on like election or in presidential years because the state's paying a lot of money, but it's going to be mostly paid for every year.
So I would say this, not knowing the exact percentage, if it gets down to the end and and it's super tight, if you're going to take anything, take that then, because it's just misclassified. We get commented on this every year, and it's, literally it was just to make government work at a time when there was no money. So it's equipment revolving. It makes it look, it's not right, is basically what it amounts to, so.
Essentially, the only thing that we're not getting reimbursed on is Franklin County.
Oh, Franklin County's cost in the election.
Because we don't
Okay.
bill to ourselves.
Okay, so that's it. So it's going to be the same either way then.
It's essentially net neutral to the budget. I mean, even if there's a little bit of an offset there, it looks like the outgoing cost is bigger than the revenue loss, but it's just going to another
And
department.
it puts us into compliance.
Yeah, it's,
Next one up is attorney position in Office of Public Defense. Looking to move this public defense attorney position from a grade 20 to 21. So I think the intent is they would then have a grade 20 position in their office and a grade 21.
so what do they currently have, 2 grade 20s?
Correct.
And why does one need to be different than the other? Same job, right?
I mean, I think their intent, and they can certainly speak to it better than I, is that there would be a public defense attorney 1 and a public defense attorney 2, so two different levels. So the intent to have one person that has more experience. Margo, do you have any extra insight?
Yeah, I didn't want to jump on you. So they do currently have an OPD like 1 and 2 position. The 2, I believe, and I don't know if this was already submitted, but they came to the board asking, I think, to offer either at a grade 20 or 21 for that open position that they have already. But it would be, the different, I'm going to butcher it because I'm not a criminal person, but like the different levels of the cases. So the 2 would be the Superior Court, the felony cases, instead of kind of contracting a lot of those out, and then 2 is more of your misdemeanor. So I think originally they had two, but one was a 20, one was a 17. That kind of got changed throughout this year, where there was a resolution, they brought their current person on as a 20, then came back. I unfortunately don't know, sometime this summer or late fall, to ask to do the 2 as a 21. I'm not sure what the timing of putting in the budget versus when that resolution is. It might kind of already be there. For what little I know.
I think both the positions were approved, but they were, and I think there may have been a PDA 1 and 2, but I think they were still listed as both grade 20, even though they're different.
When the one got, the person hired on, they got to a 20, then they had 2 20s, but they really needed it to be a 21. To have that more complex cases. That is their current open position.
The senior, the one desired to be more senior is the open one. The one is felony qualified. And the other one's not felony qualified? Do we know?
I don't want to say no on that. I know there's some like different stipulations for them, but
Well,
my
it-
understanding when they posted it is like the 2 would be your superior court, and the 1 would be your district court level. And then there's different variances through there, but
Yeah, most of our defense attorneys are contract. I don't know that I'm seeing any supervisory responsibility of any consequence. Larry does that. And ultimately, they all, I think, have to be felony qualified. I think that's the intent. Could be wrong. I wish Larry was here to ask him, but I'm not sure I'm seeing why they have to be a 20 and a 21, or why they can't both be the same grade.
Is this an enticement to try to get somebody to fill that position?
no, I truly believe it's, and I hate to speak for them because I feel like I'm not necessarily know what I'm talking about, but there is different levels. You have to have so many cases under your belt to be able to try different levels of our higher levels of cases. Like there's a whole list of requirements, I guess, that my understanding are slightly different than like in the prosecuting attorneys and the levels or whatever that they need. I'm going on the right path since
Yeah,
Kelly's
that's
kind of
correct. That's correct.
nodding her head, but it's not so much an enticement.
We don't have nobody in that position right now, so.
It is
So we're offering more money trying to get somebody with that experience to fill that position.
Yeah, and it's gonna be because of the experience, because they need somebody for that level.
And Chair, I didn't want to cut,
Yes.
I didn't want to
The
cut
open
Margot
one?
off, but
The open one is the 20 or the 21?
Would be the 21.
And you don't know whether or not the 20 is felony panel qualified? It's not. Okay.
Chair recognizes Mr.
yeah,
Gonzalez.
forgive me, Mark, I didn't want to cut you off, but I have talked to Larry, and that is the intent, is to be able to hire somebody with more robust qualifications, because the 20, it doesn't necessarily allow that, and they've been having trouble hiring a full-time employee in that position, because it simply doesn't pay enough. So this is an enticement, an opportunity to hopefully get somebody with the felony qualifications, because the stipulations, interestingly enough, for a deputy prosecuting attorney, and Kelly would know this better than I would, but on the defense side, there's actually more stipulations as far as qualifications, right? So yeah, it's you would think it would be the other way, but it's actually for defense, it's a much higher threshold.
And with what other counties are paying, that position may not get filled.
Yeah, even at a 21, it's
even at that
going to be
pay.
tough.
Yeah.
It really will be a challenge.
And if everybody would be in agreement, I know Commissioner Mullen has a doctor's appointment. If we could continue this tomorrow after we get done with the public defense attorney, if we can continue recess till tomorrow and finish it tomorrow. He has a doctor's appointment, and I'd like him in on this budget meeting. So what's the consensus of the prosecuting attorney?
Well, I'm either yes on the public defense request and the prosecuting attorney request both, or I'm no on both, because the same arguments accrue.
Well, the prosecuting attorney's already been approved. It's a yes.
Well, you asked about the prosecuting attorney, that's why I responded.
Defense attorney. Yes,
Sorry, I don't want to just speak out. If you are, waiting until tomorrow to do the arrest, I can look up what that resolution was that OPD did bring before the board.
Okay.
And requesting what they could offer that, to position, and just to see kind of what the wording in there was.
Okay.
And then especially with the timing of maybe when it was presented for the budgetary stuff, that it might have a similar situation that the prosecuting attorney's
okay.
office had, but I can look that up for you.
If the board is in agreement, we'll let you do that work and we'll recess until tomorrow. What time is it tomorrow, Tim? It's been advertised. We got to go with the time advertised?
Correct. It,
Okay,
1:30 tomorrow.
1:30 tomorrow. And we still, he said, Commissioner Mullen said we got a couple minutes here.
I'll be quick. With this corrections position, when we did the budget, we have to list what the increase in cost is going to be. And those are set currently as 2 part-time grade 10s that's paid out of the commissary fund, which is not a general fund obligation. So this 36, we could actually shift some of that money back to the commissary fund and not take that full 36,000 out of the general fund. So I don't know if we want to go rework that.
It is split already. This is the, this was sharing the cost between the two funds.
But we do have some ability to
Leeway.
to move that. So I don't know if we need to look at to what that fund looks like, but that would be a possibility.
Thank you, because every dollar is counting right now. All right, so if there's no objection, we'll recess until tomorrow at 1:30.